Hi, this is Nicole. So today I'm going to talk about reduction of HIV risk in California prisons by the use of syringe exchange programs. So here's my problem statement. Factors such as unprotected sex, unsafe tattooing, and intravenous drug use are contributors to the spread of HIV within prison facilities. Although rates of HIV infection have declined over the years, it is clear that more can be done to prevent the spread within the prison system. On average, people in prison are 5 times more likely to be living with HIV than the general population. So the issue of unprotected sex has already been addressed in California prisons. By 2015, all prisons in California were required to have access to condoms for inmates under Assembly Bill 966. As prisoners remain at increased risk of HIV infection, it's time to also address the issues of unsafe tattooing and needle sharing within the prison in order to further reduce the risk of HIV infections. And here we have some background on the information. From 2001 to 2010, HIV rates steadily declined in United States prisons, with the number of inmates infected dropping 16%, and the number of HIV-related deaths in prison dropping by 77%. And so this actually dropped the rate of prison deaths below that of the general population. According to the most recent report on HIV in prisons, which was provided by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, rates of HIV have continued to decline up to the last reported date of 2015. However, despite the lower rates of AIDS-related deaths among inmates, we must focus on the fact that their risk of being infected with HIV is 5 times that of the general population. So outside of prisons, syringe exchange programs have shown promise in reducing the spread of HIV. The current policy in California does not allow any access to clean needles or syringes for prisoners. However, the need for programs that allow needle exchange is evident, much like the changes made in recent years for condom availability in the state prisons. So once again, California passed Assembly Bill 966 in 2013, which required state prisons to provide condoms to prisoners in an effort to protect them from sexually transmitted infections such as HIV. This bill took a public health perspective to action to prevent the spread of STIs. However, the bill does not offer protection against HIV as spread by the use of shared syringes and needles among inmates. To fully address the problem of STIs, specifically bloodborne infections, similar action should be taken to reduce HIV spread by injection of drugs and use of tattooing needles. I found this condom comparison useful when considering what can be done to reduce HIV by syringe exchange programs in the California prisons. So here we take a look at what other countries have done. In Spain, a needle exchange program in a prison successfully reduced HIV infection and showed that prisoners and staff interviewed did not believe that such programs increased drug use, which is a common concern. Canada also recently adopted a prison exchange program in May of 2018 on the basis of it being evidence-based in reducing bloodborne infections. In Kyrgyzstan, needle sharing decreased from 20% to 8% among 2 prisons that implemented syringe exchange programs. So these countries are really, we really can look at these countries to model a similar program here in California. So looking at syringe exchange programs that exist in California communities, within communities, California has implemented over 40 syringe exchange programs. These services not only provide clean syringes, but they also offer the opportunity for free testing and education. Researchers found that for the majority of people using SEPs, it was the only contact that they had with health or social services. This highlights the importance of these programs in education and outreach. For prevention, one study of 81 cities showed that rates of HIV infection decreased by 5.8% each year in those with syringe exchange programs, while cities without them increased by the same percentage of 5.8%. Similar policies could prove useful within the prison system. As of 2013, only about 60 prisons out of 10,000 worldwide enacted a syringe exchange program, despite recommendations by both the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime and the World Health Organization. It should also be noted that concerns about such programs encouraging drug use are unfounded. A 5-year follow-up study in San Francisco actually showed a reduction in injection frequency among those involved with syringe exchange programs. So now we're going to look a little more at the support by the World Health Organization. Support for prison-based syringe exchange programs was provided in a 2007 document produced by the World Health Organization. This document stated that there is evidence that the utilization of SEPs in prisons is both feasible and effective in reducing needle sharing and therefore HIV infection. It also suggested that prison-based SEPs are beneficial in reducing overdose risk and abscesses and can increase referrals and the amount of inmates accessing drug treatment programs. A 2014 updated review supports these same claims. Furthermore, it stated that there is no convincing evidence of any major unintended negative consequences, which ultimately begs the questions of why SEPs have not yet been implemented in United States prisons. So finally, I'd like to mention my policy recommendation. So my recommendation is a mandate to implement syringe exchange programs within the California state prisons within 5 years. The 5-year time mark was really thought up based on the way that the Condom Access Bill 966 was implemented. They also gave 5 years because these things take time to implement, and you want to make sure that you do it right. And it's just easier to get everyone on board if you give time to implement these things. So the plan for implementation should be produced by the California Department of Corrections in conjunction with the California Department of Public Health. I think it's important to have representation from both of these departments in order to ensure a smooth transition. This policy would allow prisoners to exchange already used needles for new ones, including needles made by prisoners themselves, such as from pens, which is of high concern in HIV transmission. Replacements would not be provided without an inmate producing a needle or syringe for exchange. This is to ensure the safety of those within the facility and really to knock out any concerns about the dangers of providing needles to prisoners. The prison-based syringe exchange program would require that a facility be provided that protects the privacy of inmates, but that remains easily accessible. This is another reason that coordination between the California Department of Corrections and the California Department of Public Health is so important, because without protecting the privacy of prisoners, it's not clear whether or not this program can be as effective as possible. So, continuing on with that, an education campaign on the utilization of the program is also recommended, so that prisoners feel safe and secure in exchanging products and do not face fear of persecution for their use of drugs while in prison. This is similar to the implementation of condom use and making them accessible as sex in prison is not allowed, but again, this is taking a public health perspective to reduce the risk of HIV transmission. Facilities should also contain brochures and up-to-date information on drug treatment available to prisoners at that particular program. It should also contain information on follow-up treatment for those that may be re-entering society. As I mentioned before, this is a consideration because these programs actually have the ability to reduce drug use among prisoners as they do in the community. So it's important to not only provide the needles, but to also provide education when the opportunity is given. So finally, I'm going to look at stakeholders. In order for the proposed policy to be enacted, support from relevant stakeholders is necessary. In particular, the state legislature is important as they have the power to enact this proposal. Public support by prison officials, public health officials, and health system leaders will also benefit this proposal. Finally, people in every community should be made aware of the increased risks of HIV infection in the incarcerated population and how this policy could benefit their own neighborhoods. The benefit I'm talking about is because the burden of HIV and AIDS goes beyond the prison system, especially as 95% of offenders will be released back into the community. For those who remain in prison, taxpayer money will be the source of funds for the treatment of HIV-infected prisoners. So it really benefits all of us as taxpayers to approve such a bill. Therefore, members of the community should also take interest in the health of prisoners and in reducing their risk of contracting HIV. Thank you so much for watching my presentation. I feel that this policy truly has the evidence needed to support its implementation. Since California supported AB 966 to allow access to condoms in prisons, I feel that the state shows promise in also adopting prison-based syringe exchange programs. The hope is that California could then serve as a model for the rest of the United States. And that's the end to my presentation. Thank you.